Today on the show, we have Freya Burton. Freya is Chief Sustainability Officer at LanzaTech. And if you somehow have not heard of LanzaTech, I highly suggest you check them out. In addition to listening to Freya and my conversation here, LanzaTech has developed a revolutionary technology that turns industrial pollution into products that would otherwise come from fossil fuels. Previously thought to be impossible, but they have done the impossible. They're also unique in the sense that they have been around for 20 years, 25 years, and have built a company around a revolutionary innovation. Freya has additionally been with the company for most of those 20 years. She was a founding employee, and in the conversation we talk about her experience, her perspective from being not only in the same company for 20 years, but in the same space, in the same industry for 20 years, watching it change and grow over time. We also talk about what sustainability means and how she's navigated obstacles doing some of the hardest things that are possible out in the industry, and advice about building and what it means to be successful in such a deep tech space. All things that I elaborate on in my newsletter that you can sign up for in the description or at earthonward.com. Thank you as always to the partners that make this possible. Clean Tech Growth Lab, if you're looking to grow inside of clean tech, climate tech, they are the experts to work with. And if you're looking to grow in any other sector, it is Craze and Friends, no question, the producer of this podcast. And now, for Freya. Freya, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on today.
I cannot wait to get into it. We're gonna fit a million questions into this episode.
No pressure.
But before we do that, if you could give a brief introduction of yourself and what you're building.
Sure. So my name is Freya Burton. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer of a company called LanzaTech. I've been with LanzaTech for almost 20 years. I was clearly a child hire when I started. And what LanzaTech has developed over these years is what we call a carbon recycling platform. So we have essentially we use biology to capture pollution and turn it into stuff that would otherwise come from fossil oil, petroleum, and so on. And so we've developed this platform. We've been scaling it up for many years, and I've been part of that journey. It's been tiring, but I'm still here, and it's been a lot of fun. So that is me. I'm based in the UK, but I was with the company. It was started in New Zealand. And then we moved our team to the US. So I was in Chicago for many years and came back to the UK a couple of years ago.
Wonderful. Well, already, I mean, even location-wise, I'm curious how your experiences were there. But I think it is so fascinating and wonderful, amazing, inspiring that you joined LanzaTech. How big was LanzaTech when you joined?
There were 3 others. So I was about the 4th hire. And I actually worked with one of the co-founders, Sean Simpson. He and his co-founder, Richard Forster, They had started the technology, and there was a little group of them trying to make it work. And I used to work with Sean's wife, teaching English. But I have a biology background, and I chatted with Sean, who said, I've got this idea for a company for this technology. And I was looking for a change of pace. And so I thought, okay, I'll chat with this guy. And he said, oh, you want to join? It could be something. And, that was back in early 2007. Before we had got our Series A funding. Yeah. So at the time, we didn't have any assets. We just had kind of, we had like a photocopier on lease. It was very few people. We shared lab space with another sort of company, and we just kind of got by. And I thought, all right, I'll join. Let's, probably not going to last. We'll see how long this sticks around
Yeah.
for.
Well,
That was a long time ago.
well,
So
congratulations! Just recognition to a 20-year journey that's ended up where you guys are at now, making incredible impact, commercial scale, all these things. 20 years, while it may be tiring, I think is something that a lot of entrepreneurs dream about. So, a little bit more context before we get into the technology that you guys have been building. Can you tell me a little bit more about who you were at the time that you decided to? Because you gave a lot of context to where your headspace was, how you got started. But had you always imagined or pursued entrepreneurship? Is it something you thought you were going to do, or startup world ecosystem, or was it something that you fell into, like you were saying?
yeah, I would largely say I fell into it. But when I look back at what I did prior, I was teaching for a while. Before that, I worked for another startup in the UK. And so I've always been drawn to, people trying to do something new, without going out there trying to look for it. I think, when I left university, I didn't go, oh, I want to be a chief sustainability officer. I mean, to be honest, back then that kind of role didn't exist. I certainly didn't think I wanted to work in kind of climate tech or sort of scale up. I hadn't really thought about it, but I've always enjoyed a challenge and trying to do new things, and so I kind of just stumbled into it. So when the opportunity at LanzaTech came along, I just thought, hey, why not? This seems like a kind of cool concept that people think is impossible. I want to give it a go. And I also enjoy the idea of, you know, helping create something from nothing. So there was just a small group of people with an idea, with no resources, and that doesn't scare me, you know. And I felt like I can probably help think about things differently, you know, make things happen with, few resources, which is pretty important when you're on a startup journey.
Right.
And enjoy it while it happens. So I've always thrived in that kind of environment.
So I think there's probably like 4 or 5 episodes that we could do detailing the journey of LanzaTech over 20 years, and that's something I think I'd love to do because there's a lot that people in the community, startups in general, but especially clean tech, climate tech, could learn from what you've experienced in 20 years growing the company. And so we can just start. We can very very surface level go over the arc of the last 20 years or so. So and I'm open to however you want to take it, but from that point of when you started and the point that you're at now, could you just outline which it could be one, it could be 5, but what are the major milestones that you would say are in LanzaTech's journey over the last 20 years?
Yeah, so I'd say if we start at the beginning, a big milestone was getting our first closing our first funding round.
Okay.
So Series A, that was in 2007, wasn't a 20. And that was an investor called Vinod Khosla through a fund, Khosla Ventures. And it was the first non-US investment he had done. And we were a kind of, a small outfit in New Zealand. And it was, a pretty big deal to make that happen. And so that allowed us to grow. And we could actually hire people. I always joked, I did everything in the company until we could afford to hire somebody who was qualified, you know. And so, when we closed the funding rounds, that was really important because we could actually bring in, specialists for certain.
How long was it after you joined that happened?
It wasn't that long, but subsequent funding rounds, really, for me, I still
Gotcha.
ended up doing quite a lot of
Gotcha.
stuff.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah. Hasn't really changed. Um, but I think so that was a
All
big
right.
milestone, first milestone.
All right.
I think the second milestone we had this idea that we could so the company was founded by 2 biologists who said um, they actually worked for a company that tried to make fuel from plant resources like biomass. and it didn't work. And so they said, we need an alternative. We need a source of carbon. Oh, where's a big source of carbon? Oh, pollution. And we're trying to get rid of it. So let's try and make that work. So they actually worked out that there was a biological pathway that could consume carbon, just like yeast eats sugar as a sort of an input. A biocatalyst or bacteria can eat carbon and pollution and make ethanol. So that was another massive milestone that they, one, discovered that this is possible, looking at a sort of biological pathway. Then you can actually get bacteria from what's called like a bacteria library. It sounds super weird, but it's
Sure.
you get like a freeze-dried bacteria. It's very safe. Bearing in mind, we worked in New Zealand, which has very strict sort of security laws, but
Right.
we could bring in this safe bacteria. And then we were able to actually test it using gases from a working steel mill in New Zealand. So that was a huge milestone to say, go from having an idea on paper to actually getting data that showed that you could make ethanol from steel mill emissions.
Gotcha. Okay, so yeah, so that was my follow up to that was when you say there reached a point where this technology, this idea was proven. My question was, okay, was it statistical significance in the lab? Was it patent paperwork that you had successfully filed for, or was it the success of the mill that ultimately kind of bookended
I
that
think
milestone for you?
the big thing was seeing that first data. So we would actually do analysis on the products that so what happens is, I'll just quickly explain.
Do it.
You've got like a little reactor. It's like a little vessel, and it sounds cool, a reactor, but it's just like a glass vessel.
Okay.
And it swirls around lots of liquid. And in the liquid is we call it the bug, the bacteria, and you push in gas. So like pollution comes in, swirls around, bacteria eats it. And as it eats it, it grows. And when it grows, it makes ethanol as a byproduct. And we take little bits of that liquid out and run it through a machine to check how much ethanol is being made, or if any ethanol is being made. And so the first data that showed that the idea we had, pollution in, ethanol out, was the data that showed ethanol graphs,
Gotcha.
ethanol being produced. So that was like, oh, it actually works. And it's not just an idea. It was a big deal.
Gotcha. Awesome. So that's cool. And then you went and proved it in a real world use case after capturing
Yeah.
data.
So scaling, I'd say probably the next one was doing a pilot plant in a steel mill. So it went from like a sample of gas in a lab to a pilot plant at a steel mill.
And would you be able to also give years for that as well?
Yeah. So the 2008 was some of the initial lab data, 2007, 2008. Then the pilot plant was sort of 2008. Then we built a demonstration plant in 2012 in China. So that was another milestone, going to China. And we went to China because there was a lot of steel and a lot of pollution and a lot of interest in doing something with the pollution. And things happened quite quickly there. So it was, it was good.
So what was the gap in between 2007 and 2012? Was it just the funding and the development of that plant?
The funding, yep. So we closed a Series B in 2009, which was led by Chinese investors. And then it was then building the demonstration plant and then starting to run it. So it was sort of that combination there. So it was sort of lab, pilot, demo, and
wonderful.
and then we did commercial plant. So you'd say the sort of, if I cheat, I'd put all of these as a milestone, the scale up.
Do it.
But the commercial milestone was 2018. So we started operating that. So that's, just sort of 10-ish years from concept to a commercial plant, which for a complete new process is pretty incredible.
Yeah, seriously. So there's so much to detail there. I think that's that we won't get into now, but it's really awesome. I'll just show my appreciation for that process. So I'm it's really awesome that you guys have done that. So, um, uh, thank you for running through that. I think that gives a lot of context into where you guys are at now. Is there anything? So I guess just to cap off this segment, it's so 2018 you began commercializing. Has that been basically what the company's been doing since 2018 has just been expanding into the commercial space?
Yeah, so what we have now, today we have 6 plants using the technology, 4 in China, 1 in India, and 1 in Belgium. We
Amazing.
license the technology, so we don't have to build, own, and operate, which is a big problem when you're scaling. You know, if you have a cool technology, then you need to put all your money into building the plant, that's what often limits kind of the scale up process for many companies. So we've licensed it. So what we're doing now, is we're trying to license that to others, or looking at creative ways to partner with
Gotcha.
kind of people who can finance a plant for us.
Sure. Awesome. Oh man. All right. So we're getting into another section that I'm really excited to get your opinion on. Is like you said, your current position is Chief Sustainability Officer, and so my first question for you is, in your opinion, what does sustainability mean, or at least in your
Yeah.
context?
In so yeah, in my context, it I think a really important thing is that it means that you're able to keep doing business. I think too often people think sustainability is a kind of happy clappy hug a tree thing, but it's actually about your ability to survive either as a planet, people, community, or a business. And so that's why we need to think about, well, how much does it cost? Are we wasting money by being wasteful? Maybe we should rethink how we buy things, how we supply things. Do we get more money for a product if it has a lower carbon footprint? So how do we do that? What about water use? Is it costing us a lot? Is it bad for the environment? What do customers want? So thinking about all of those things. But, so for us, sustainability is the ability to have a company or have a technology that is able to succeed, forever,
Hmm.
because it can survive.
Gotcha.
Something that's not sustainable is something that maybe will run out of resources or will be too expensive for customers or something like that.
So then follow up to that is so thank you for that. So with the context of what sustainability means, what Chief Sustainability Officer does, do you see this role becoming more popular? When you see other people being CSOs, are they approaching it in the same way? Do you feel like a CSO position should be more common? Any one of those.
Yeah, so I think I'm not a traditional CSO,
Okay.
in that I do a number of things. So I still haven't lost the
Right.
just get stuff done, I
Yeah.
suppose. A nice way of putting it. Whatever needs to get done. Um, but I think it is increasingly important, but I think it's being renamed. So I think
Okay.
you probably get people who are doing the same things, but they're now either in finance teams or procurement teams, which would be under finance teams, rather than a standalone CSO, or it's embedded into other parts of the business. Um, so I think it is still important, and I think there is recognition that it does have an impact on the bottom line rather than something like a box check for
Gotcha.
being friendly to the planet.
Yeah, I've been seeing that narrative. So I'm glad that you brought it up about this specifically because that this narrative of clean tech or climate tech, several years ago, the allure honestly, in a lot of cases, the value proposition that was being put forward was like, hey, it's good for the planet. We should
Yeah.
just do it. And now it's transitioning more. And there was a lot of funding that went into companies like that. A lot of them did not succeed if they weren't able to accomplish what you're saying, which is, hey, yeah, it's good for the planet, but whether or not you're thinking that way or you even believe in it, like financially, it is the better option.
Yeah.
So,
The planet benefit is like gravy, it's,
right,
it's got
right.
to make economic sense. People aren't going to do business, just because it's warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
It needs to make sense. And then if it does these additional things, even better. And that probably feeds into the economics as well.
Yeah. So, and again, super unique and incredible that you've been working on this for 20 years. So I'm curious. I had two very big picture questions because unfortunately, I think we don't have time for these big picture questions. But the first one is with your perspective, with the piece of the world that you've been interacting with, the piece of climate tech that you've been interacting with through LanzaTech, how has the world, the political environment, the scientific environment, whatever environments are relevant to LanzaTech's success, how have these environments evolved and changed over the 20 years that you've been in this space?
So I would say when I started, there wasn't any kind of carbon tech or climate tech. We had just really come out of kind of the clean tech 1.0, which was all the kind of the corn ethanol boom and then bust. And so as a company trying to make ethanol, people didn't want to talk to us because they were like, oh, we've just gone through all this clean tech 1.0. What a nightmare. Stay away. There was nobody talking about carbon. Nobody was talking about the circular carbon economy, which is something we talk about a lot. So turning carbon into stuff. And so what we've seen is we've kind of helped create the narrative around these areas. I personally have spent a lot of the last 20 years working on policy frameworks to support all of these types of technologies, be it kind of tax credits in the US or fuels legislation in Europe and India, because we've had to be at the forefront showing what technology exists, what is possible, and how to frame it in the sense of, how to make policies that help scale. So it didn't exist. We've helped create it. There's definitely been kind of ups and downs over the years. And I think it's really interesting that even when politically there's more conversation about kind of eco credentials and things, you sometimes get more barriers for new technology companies because I think there's been a tendency to be scared of making the wrong decision as a policymaker. And so you want perfect policy solutions. And that means that people trying to do something new have to jump through a lot of hoops. And, and so you've got this fear from Clean Tech 1.0 when, there was a lot of push on corn ethanol as an example. And people went, oh no, there's, food versus fuel and other things we hadn't thought about. And so today, when you're trying to bring a new technology to market, you have this fear of letting everyone take part and then have an unintended consequence. Instead of going, look, we should diversify the energy pool, let everybody have a go, we'll figure it out as we go. And the problem is some of the kind of government rationale over the years has been only the perfect solutions can succeed. And that's very hard if you're trying to do something new. And so I'm saying this because it's not always cut and dry that, one political era is better for green tech or clean tech than another. It's that, there needs to be this kind of open perspective that we need to let new technologies succeed and fail on their own and not have kind of policies make it tough.
Gotcha. Do you feel like this is you mentioned a lot of different places because LanzaTech has operated in a number of different places around the world. And so from a policy perspective, do you feel like there is more leniency relative to 20 years ago around letting technologies fail on their own?
There's more, I'd say I don't know if it's leniency. I think there's a lot of technical issues to overcome. I'd say there's more willingness to include new technologies today
Awesome.
because people are talking about it. So, for example, in Europe, they have categories of fuels that are made from recycled carbon. And in the US, there are incentives for making things like ethanol from wastes and capturing carbon and using it. So there are things that are in place now that didn't exist today. So it is a better place. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, that's great to hear. So we are coming up on time. So I have a couple of two of my favorite questions, but one important question is that as you know, this episode is part of an effort to highlight women in leadership, and what I'd like to hear from you is based on, and I've obviously a lot more questions about your experience as a woman in this space, and especially as a woman leader, but for a young woman in the audience that is listening and interested in getting into this space, whatever label you want to put on climate tech, clean tech, biology, any hard science, what would you say to them given your experience?
Yeah, and it's a great question, and I'm really pleased that you talk about this as well, because it is hard in this space just generally, and traditionally there's not many women in energy or in the science sort of STEM subjects, and it can be a challenge. And actually, I'm really lucky at LanzaTech that our CEO is a woman, and we often joke that when she goes to events, you see the kind of event picture, and it's like you can count the women on one hand, when it's energy, be it clean tech or other. And that's tough. But I think, it goes hand in hand with this type of industry. What we're trying to do is tough. And, there is no reason why you shouldn't be able to play a part in trying to change the world. What I find really interesting is Jennifer, our CEO, she's always joked that anybody who's ever told her that she couldn't do something, her response is watch me. And that's kind of become like a mantra for us. And we have a great mix of people at LanzaTech doing all sorts of things. There's no barriers there, be it sort of synthetic biology, engineering, business, finance. We have a really strong sort of female-led board and executive team. And so they're these natural role models. So I would say to anyone, first of all, don't take no for an answer. Just if someone says you shouldn't be doing that, think, watch me, you're going to do it, but also just keep going, because it's a relentless cycle. You just have to, keep going. It is hard, especially if you choose to go into kind of this tough tech sector. Changing the world is tough. And, if it wasn't, everyone would be doing it. And so I think it's really important to keep that in mind. I don't think I would have necessarily started out, I didn't go into this with my eyes open, shall we say. I didn't think I'd still be doing this.
Of course.
But I think it's really important as well, first of all, keep going, but also enjoy what you're doing. So don't ever feel pressured to go into something or into a subject because people think you should be doing it. You absolutely should be doing what you love and what you want to do. Because this has been my life. I have two kids. They're very much Lanza children. They have grown up with the company. And so you spend a lot of time working and doing things. So it has to be something you enjoy. So I don't think enough people talk about enjoying what you do. So I think regardless of who you are, that's key. But the second point is don't take no for an answer. If someone says you shouldn't be working in STEM or tough tech or whatever, watch me.
Gotcha. Yes. Thank you, Freya, for highlighting that. That's awesome. So two last questions, and in the theme of what you're saying, it's very difficult. What you're doing, it's very hard work. With all with all this work to be done, what is the biggest hurdle that you would say you at work or Lanza as a company is facing at the moment, and how is it also an opportunity?
I think a hurdle always is cash. So,
Okay, yeah.
regardless of what technology you're approaching this from, and Lanza's no exception, cash, be it for our partners looking to get a final investment decision on a project, or getting capital into the company for scaling, be it for new talent or for scaling expertise in different areas of the organization. That's a continuous challenge. Again, not, it's not for the faint-hearted, but you can overcome these obstacles. And so turning that to the opportunity, well, what does that mean? It means you have to really think about why people need to invest in your type of technology. And it helps you think about what you're offering and why it's important. And I suppose that in turn helps you, if you're working in the organization, to go, oh, that's why I'm doing this, because you need to think about this as almost like your own money, and why should people be putting money into that? And so you need to really believe in it, and it helps you frame the right narrative and really understand why what you're doing is important.
Well done. Lastly, for you, I'm curious what, just like many pieces of these conversation for me, what inspires you?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I could say, my family and blah, 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 but actually, I'm more stubborn than inspired. So
Yeah.
I've been at this for so long. What inspires me is the fact that we have to make this work. Like, I will not leave here until I've done every single thing I can. So I don't know if that's like inspirational, but but like for me, I've been part of something incredible. It's hard, but I thrive in it, and that keeps me going. So that's kind of like my own little sunrise inspo quote, or my morning cup of coffee equivalent, is waking up going, let's do it. There's another challenge. Let's do it. Let's overcome it. So I think that's what it is for me, rather than
Yeah, gotcha.
having some inspiration.
No, I think what's inspiring about that is to hear the fact that it is possible to be in your position. It is possible to find something that you enjoy as much, even if it hasn't been for 20 years straight, but something that you enjoy as much as you do, something that you can dedicate yourself to, and something that has built to the scale that it has. It is inspiring to hear that
I
from
would
you.
I would add a final thought, that make sure you have some other outlets or interests, because
Oh, good,
otherwise
good. Yeah.
work will consume you. So whatever it is, for me, it's like my dog and trashy romantasy novels and doing jigsaw puzzles, like something that like switches your brain off. Super important. Otherwise, if you don't look after yourself, you can't, achieve what you need to do.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much for the conversation. I know we're coming up here. If anyone else was inspired to follow along with the journey, what's the best way to do so?
You can follow us on social media, on X or on LinkedIn. It's at LanzaTech. And we have our website as well, where we post recent news. So those would be good ways to keep along on the journey.
Beautiful. Freya, thank you so much. I'm excited to stay in touch and see you guys go.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.